Today's lesson is going to be on functions with domain and range. We're going to do three things. We're going to identify whether a given relation is a function, state the domain and range of discrete relations, and then state the domain and range of continuous relations. So first thing let's talk about is vocab. So a relation is a set of x and y values. Now there are four different ways that you can show a relation. The first way is by doing ordered pairs, so you list them out. You could have a mapping diagram where the first oval are your input values, second oval is your output values. You can also have a table of values where you have x column, y column, and then you can also show it graphically. Now what specifically is a function? It's a type of relation. A function is specifically when your x values don't repeat. So our first task today is to figure out, is the given relation a function or not? So let's look at example 1. What I like to do here is I like to first list out my points. So my first point is -2, -2. I got that because I was here and I went to the -2 in the output column. Then I go to my second arrow, which is -2 to +2. So I write that down. Then I go from 0 to 1, so 0, 1. And then from 3 to 1, which is going to be 3, 1. After I've written them all down, I specifically look at my x's, so -2, -2, 0, and 3. And I ask myself, do any of those numbers repeat? I would say yes. This means that this is not a function because x equals -2 repeats. It's definitely really important that you're specific about what repeats, so you want to actually say x equals -2 repeats. All right, second one is ordered pairs. So again, I look at just the x's, so 0, 2, and 3. None of these repeat. So this means that these ordered pairs are a function. The way that you could say it is that it's a function because the x values don't repeat. All right, so now we're going to look at the vertical line test. So if a vertical line crosses the graph more than once, then it is not a function. So if I look here, this is a function because when I draw this down, it crosses once. And any location where I draw a vertical line, it only crosses once. So that's a function. This is not a function because it crosses once, twice, 2 times. This one's also not a function because, again, once, twice. So it can only cross once in order to be a function. So let's look over here. So we have 3 different graphs. I'm going to draw my line down. This crosses once, crosses once. There's no place where it's going to cross twice, so I would say this is a function because it passes the vertical line test. Let's take a look at this last one. So right, if I draw a line here, 1 dot. If I draw a line here, it goes through 3 dots. So that makes this not a function because it fails the vertical line test. All right, so now let's go look at domain and range. We are going to have 2 different types of relations. So we're going to have discrete relations, which are specific points and dots. You can see this as tables, ordered pairs, a mapping diagram, or a graph with specific points. So let's talk about domain and range for discrete relations. So domain is going to be the set of all possible input values. And if we're talking about input values, those are going to be our x values. Range is going to be the set of all possible output values. And if we're talking about output values, these are going to be our y values. So how do we actually write domain and range? Well, we're going to list out all the values from least to greatest, and we're going to make sure that we don't do any duplicates. So let's take a look. State the domain and range for the following set of points. So this is discrete. I know we're in the discrete section. Let's just write it again. So this is discrete. My domain, I look at the x's, so 1, 3, and 2. And I just need to make sure that I put them in order from lowest to highest. So I have 1, 2, 3. Then I look at my y's, which are 5, 9, and 7. And I got to put them in order from lowest to highest, so 5, 7, 9. That's it. Now, this graph down here, this is also discrete. It's because it's specific points. Now, what I like to do is, because it's kind of hard sometimes for me to look at the graph, is I write my points out. So this point right here is -3, -4. So I'm going to write that out, -3, -4. I'm going to cross it off once I've used it. Then I go -2, 5. Then I have 1, -2. And I have 1, 3. And 4, 0. Once I've written all my points, then I do my domain and range. So my domain, -3, -2, 1, 1, and 4. So I got to put them in order from lowest to highest, but I also don't do any repeats. So my first number would be -3, -2, 1, and 4. Notice that I did not write the 1 twice. It's because we don't do repeats. Then I look at my y's. So let's see, my lowest one would be -4. So I'm going to start with that. Might help to cross it off once you've used it. Then I have -2. Then we have 0. And we have, let's see, 3 and then 5. All right, so 3, 5. All right, our last thing are the continuous relations. So this is going to be a connected graph, and the only way you're ever going to see a continuous relation is by seeing a graph. So the domain, this is going to be where the graph starts and ends on the x-axis, which means we go left to right. The range is where the graph starts and ends on the y-axis, which means we go down to up. So the domain is left to right. The range is going from down to up. Now, this has a different interval notation that we use. We are going to use these square brackets, which means the endpoint's included and it physically ends there. The parentheses mean the endpoint is not included, and it is used when the graph has an arrow going to infinity. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. We're going to state the domain and range for the continuous graphs. So this is our x-axis. Our domain is our x. You're going to take an index card and put it here, and then you're going to move it in this direction until it first hits the graph. Now, just to be clear, the graph is the line that I'm highlighting in blue. I'm looking for when your index card hits the blue line first. And when you move it over, it's hard to show in the video, but when you move it over, the very first place that it hits is right here, which is going to be at -5. So we would say closed bracket, -5, comma, and as you keep moving it, the very last place that it hits is here, which is at 6. So 6 and then close bracket. When you do the y's, you're looking at the y-axis, and you're starting at the bottom, and you're going up. Now, the first place that it hits is going to be here, which is at -3, comma, and then when you keep going, the very last place it hits is right here, which means at 4. All right, let's do this next one. So you have an arrow here. That tells us we're actually going to infinity in some direction. So if you're starting over here and you're going to the right, you wind up hitting this arrow, which means that you actually start at -infinity. And so we do a parentheses -infinity. And when you keep going to the right, there's no arrow on the right-hand side. It actually ends. So it looks like it's going to end at 8. And then I do a closed bracket. For the range, you start at the bottom and you go up. But again, the first thing it hits is the arrow, which means you start at -infinity. And then we go up and it ends right here, which is at 4. Oh, we have double arrows here. Okay, so again, if you have an arrow and you're trying to look at your x's first, that's going to be -infinity. But there's also an arrow on the right-hand side as well, which tells us that we go to positive infinity on that side. Because of that, the range is actually going to be the same. If you're going up, you wind up hitting the arrow first, which means that you're at -infinity. And then if you keep going up, you have the arrow, which means you're going to be at positive infinity. So for this one, you're going from negative infinity to positive infinity in both the x's and y's. All right, this one I don't see any arrows, which tells me we're going to have specific numbers. So the first point it hits on the left is going to be -9, and we do a closed bracket. The last point on the right is going to be 4, closed bracket. For the y's, the very bottom number is -9, and the very top number is 7.